Why was the signal still breathing? The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes people whisper without knowing why. The analysts inside JSOC's Signals Intelligence Center sat frozen, their screens flickering with green lines of data and a single, impossible pulse. It beat like a heartbeat across the static, a pulse from a frequency that belonged to a dead woman. "Run the checksum again," muttered the youngest analyst, his voice trembling. His eyes flicked across the glowing numbers on his monitor, half expecting them to vanish, to prove the universe still made sense. But it didn't. The signal stayed solid, clean. From the corner, a voice broke through the room's nervous hum. "You're chasing a ghost," said analyst Thorne, leaning back in his chair like a man who enjoyed his own certainty. "Senior Chief Petty Officer Anna Sharma is dead. We buried her." The words hit like small hammer blows. Facts had weighed in rooms like this, the official kind. There was a report, a flag, a folded one. But the pulse ignored it all. On the central screen, the signal from deep inside the Zargo Mountains flickered with stubborn regularity, one steady beat every 3 seconds. It wasn't random noise. It wasn't terrain bounce or enemy chatter. It was something alive, deliberate, and maddeningly calm. Admiral Vance stood at the back of the room, arms folded, eyes steady. He had come down from his office when the alert reached him, signal anomaly, origin unknown. He'd seen thousands of anomalies in his career. This one was different. It had her frequency. He watched his people, Thorne's arrogance, the young analyst's unease, and in the middle of it, that quiet signal pulsing like a heartbeat under the floor. "Pull the metadata," Thorne ordered. "Let's not waste time pretending ghosts transmit data packets." No one moved fast enough for his liking. He stepped forward, pointing to the cascading telemetry on screen. "See that? 0 spectral flutter. That's not field equipment. That's a military-grade beacon. Enemy deception, textbook. They probably scraped her ID off her old transmitter and are feeding us bait." He smirked. "Signal warfare 101, people." The silence afterward was dense. The younger analysts glanced between each other, unwilling to agree, but afraid to challenge. Thorne's voice filled the room like a fog of superiority. He leaned closer to the screen, his reflection warping across the data lines. "We held a memorial. The Secretary of the Navy sent a letter to her parents. The flag, the ceremony, the taps, all of that. Are we really suggesting that was for show?" The question wasn't a question at all. It was a weapon. The petty officer who had first flagged the anomaly looked like he wanted to disappear. "No, sir," he murmured, his hands tightening around the edge of the desk. The pulse continued, unconcerned with rank or reputation. Admiral Vance said nothing. He had known Anna Sharma, not well, not personally, but enough to remember the way she talked during mission briefings. Slow, measured, every word carried purpose. She wasn't the type to panic or improvise without reason. She had built transmitters from broken parts, found order in chaos. He didn't believe in ghosts, but he believed in her. "Sir," the young petty officer whispered, "it's transmitting a structured code, not open comms." Thorne rolled his eyes. "Of course it is. That's what a decoy looks like." Then the pulse changed. It wasn't just a heartbeat anymore, it bloomed. A burst of dense, encrypted data scrolled across every screen. The room inhaled as one. "What the hell?" someone muttered. Thorne lunged forward. "Payload, capture it, route through primary decryption arrays. Let's see what kind of propaganda we're dealing with." Keystrokes filled the room like machine gun bursts. Screens flashed with processing bars and algorithmic attacks. Decryption suites designed to break financial networks and enemy communications hammered at the code and failed. Access denied, algorithm mismatch. Again and again, red banners painted the monitors. The data packet didn't just resist them, it ignored them. It sat there, untouched, pristine. its encryption layered like a jewel forged from mathematics and defiance. Thorne's jaw tightened. "Quantum resistance," he muttered half to himself. "That's impossible, we haven't even." The words died on his tongue. He turned to the junior analysts. "Try brute forcing the root key. Run parallel instances through the NSA servers." "Already did, sir. It." "Do it again." The man's voice cracked as he shouted, frustration overtaking reason. The room filled with noise, commands, code, clicks, a cacophony of technology and panic. But through it all, the signal's silent rhythm persisted. Calm. Unbroken. Vance stepped closer. He didn't need to say anything yet. He wanted to watch how they handled it. Minutes passed. The room grew hotter, louder, more desperate, until one by one the screens stopped flashing. Systems locked out. The attack was over. The packet was unscathed. The silence that followed was heavy, the kind of silence that humbles. Thorne stood there, shoulders stiff, face pale. The young petty officer spoke almost reverently. "Sir, the cipher structure, it's built like a fractal, every layer's unique and recursive." Thorne frowned. "English sailor." "It's not hiding a message," the young man said softly. "It is the message." Something shifted in the air. Admiral Vance stepped forward. He didn't look at Thorne. He didn't need to. His attention was fixed on the raw waveform, the carrier signal itself. "Pull up the baseline," he said. The petty officer obeyed, isolating 10 seconds of the signal's root frequency and magnifying it 1,000-fold. On the screen appeared what looked like chaos, jagged, erratic, meaningless static. But Vance's eyes narrowed. "There," he said quietly. The room leaned in. He pointed to a subtle ripple, a microscopic imperfection repeating every 32 seconds, a tiny fingerprint hiding inside perfection. "That's her," Vance whispered. "That's her fist." Confusion rippled across the analysts. "She built it into every transmitter she ever modified," he explained. "A harmonic flaw, her signature. You wouldn't see it unless you knew to look." Thorne's mouth opened, but no words came out. Vance exhaled through his nose, calm but certain. "This isn't enemy deception. It's her." He straightened. "Bring up Senior Chief Petty Officer Anna Sharma's full-service record, unredacted." The order carried weight. A few keystrokes later, the main screen transformed, data replaced by history. Rows of text scrolled down like a quiet eulogy rewritten. Unit, Naval Special Warfare Development Group, Special Projects Division. Specialization, Asymmetric Signal Warfare, Advanced Cryptanalysis, Field Electronics. Decorations, Navy Cross, Silver Star, Bronze Star with Valor, Purple Heart. Each line was proof. Thorne stared at the screen as if it had betrayed him. The woman he dismissed as bait had done what no algorithm could. She had left her mark, silent, indestructible, irrefutable. Admiral Vance looked up at her photograph. Grainy, faded, unsmiling. A woman whose strength was never in her voice but in her work. He raised his hand, crisp and slow, and saluted. Then quietly, "Get me a SEAL team. Senior Chief Sharma is alive and she's telling us where she is." The words carried through the room like a shift in gravity. Someone whispered, "Sir, her signal's origins deep in the Zargo Range, 30 miles from the last contact site." "Then we start there," Vance replied. No more noise. No more debate. The Admiral turned and walked out, leaving behind a silence that was no longer disbelief, it was conviction. The pulse continued on the screen, patient, rhythmic, unshaken. It was more than a signal now. It was a defiance against arrogance, against bureaucracy, against the quiet lie of certainty. Far away, buried beneath rock and snow, the woman they had buried 3 weeks ago was still alive, her heartbeat echoing through static and sky, whispering one message that none of their machines could ever decrypt. "I'm not done yet." Why were they sending a team for someone already buried? The question lived in every man's silence inside the hangar. It hung between the echoing clangs of tools and the muted hum of engines as the Navy SEALs loaded gear onto the MH-47. No one asked it out loud, not when Admiral Vance himself was watching from the edge of the flight line, arms folded, face unreadable under the red floodlights. Team 7 had been pulled from pre-deployment rest at 0300. No explanation, no briefing packet, just a short message, priority rescue, classified, coordinates incoming. Chief Warrant Officer Cole Harris stood near the ramp, cinching the strap of his rucksack. He'd done 16 insertions in the Zargo range before: cold, vertical terrain, oxygen thin, no comms support. It was a place that chewed men up and left only bones. But tonight felt different. There was a whisper of superstition in the air. "Who's the target?" asked Petty Officer Rains, the team's comms specialist. Harris didn't look up. "Need to know," he said, pulling the strap tight. Rains smirked. "That's your polite way of saying you don't know, huh?" Before Harris could answer, Admiral Vance approached. He wasn't a man who made speeches, and when he spoke, even rotor noise went quiet. "3 weeks ago, we buried Senior Chief Anna Sharma," he began. "Officially, unofficially, we have reason to believe she's alive." That sentence hit like a shockwave through the team. Rains blinked. "Sir, with all due respect, alive." Vance nodded. "Alive. Her signal reactivated 40 minutes ago. Confirmed origin, Zargo Mountains, same grid as her last operation." The crew exchanged wary looks. The Zargo range wasn't a place where signals came back. It was where missions ended. Vance continued. "Your job is simple. Get in, locate, verify, and extract. No open comms, no wideband ping. She embedded coordinates in the signal we decrypted. Expect hostile terrain and minimal resistance, but don't get comfortable. If she's alive, she's in deep." Harris studied the Admiral's face. "Permission to ask, sir, what's the condition of the signal?" "Stable," Vance said quietly. "Too stable for a ghost." The Admiral stepped aside, letting the words hang like orders written in the air. As the team filed toward the helicopter, Harris glanced back once. The way Vance looked after them, it wasn't command pride, it was something else. Hope maybe, or guilt. The rotors roared to life. Inside, under dim red light, the SEALs sat in silence, faces hidden behind oxygen masks and shadow. Each man lost in thought. 3 weeks, Rains muttered, half to himself. How the hell does someone survive 3 weeks out there? No food, no comms, no support. Harris didn't answer. He stared at the dark mountain silhouette through the open ramp. He'd read the briefing on Sharma years ago. Signal warfare specialist, field engineer, reputation for building miracles out of broken parts. Some called her the ghost mechanic. Others called her the quiet one who saved lives without firing a shot. He respected her not for what she'd done, but for how she'd done it. Now they were flying into her tomb to bring her home. The Chinook pitched slightly as it cut through the upper jet stream. The pilot's voice crackled through the headset. "ETA 40 minutes. Wind shear's bad. Visibility's worse." Harris leaned back. The metallic hum of the cabin became the rhythm of his thoughts. He didn't believe in miracles, but he did believe in discipline, and sometimes that was enough to defy death. Far below, in the shadowed belly of the Zargo Mountains, a single spark flared in the dark. Anna Sharma adjusted the makeshift antenna she'd rigged from copper wire and a fractured drone fin. Her hands were trembling from cold, but her movement stayed precise. The transmitter whined softly, the same steady pulse that JSOC had mistaken for a ghost. She wasn't sure if anyone was still listening. 3 weeks had blurred into a collage of cold, pain, and duty. She pressed a palm against the side of her ribs, feeling the cracked bone grind beneath her fingers. Pain wasn't new. Pain was simply another system to monitor, like signal strength or voltage output. In the far corner of the cave, 2 figures stirred. Local resistance fighters, young, exhausted, both wounded. She had saved them during the ambush, dragged them here when the world above turned into gunfire and dust. Rest, she whispered in their dialect, voice hoarse from dehydration. They nodded weakly. Anna turned back to the equipment. Every component was scavenged. A drone's core guidance chip, a truck battery for power, her old field radio for modulation. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. It was enough to whisper through the noise. Outside, the wind screamed. It carried sand, snow, and static, the world's natural encryption. Her mind flickered to the last moment before the ambush, the call that didn't go through, the explosion that deafened her, the fall. She remembered the feeling of dirt closing around her like a burial shroud. They thought she was dead. She thought so too, until her pulse refused to stop. Now she was alive because of the one thing she had always trusted more than luck: signal discipline. Every beat of that pulse carried her signature, every imperfection deliberate, her fingerprint in chaos. If they were listening, they'd know. Back in the sky, Team 7 was descending. The valley below glowed faintly through night vision, a world painted in ghost green. The wind tore at the rotors, the mountains shifting in and out of fog like shadows waiting to swallow them. "Drop point confirmed," said Rains. "Elevation 2,400. LZ is narrow, half a football field." "Copy," Harris replied. "Let's make it count." The Chinook's back ramp opened, and cold mountain air knifed through the cabin. The SEALs clipped in, checked ropes, and nodded to each other, a silent ritual that needed no words. Then they dropped. One after another they fast-roped into the dark, boots hitting stone, rifles sweeping arcs through fog. The helicopter lifted off, fading into cloud like a phantom. Only the wind remained. They moved fast, soundless, navigating by thermal overlays and map projections. The signal beacon from command pulsed faintly on Rains's wrist display, Sharma's signal. "She's here," he whispered. Harris stopped, crouched beside him. "Direction." "Bearing 210, half a click." The mountains loomed taller with every step. The path narrowed into a ravine, lined with ice-glazed rock. Every few minutes they stopped, listened. The wind, the drip of melting ice, nothing human. Then a faint vibration pulsed through Rains's wrist unit. "Signal strength increasing," he said. "She's close." The closer they moved, the more the pulse aligned with their own, steady, patient calm. Something about that rhythm gnawed at Harris. It wasn't just a beacon. It was communication, a code only someone like her would use. "She's telling us how to find her," he murmured. "Say again." Harris shook his head. "Nothing, keep moving." The ravine ended at a rock wall, sheer, frozen, impossible. The signal was strongest here. Rains frowned. "We're standing on top of it." Harris tapped the rock face, eyes scanning the cracks. Then he saw it, a faint line of soot, almost invisible. A vent. "She's beneath us." They started digging. Quiet, deliberate, controlled. No explosives, just blades and leverage. Minutes bled into half an hour. Then the rock gave way, revealing a narrow crawlspace. Warm air rushed out, the scent of smoke and burnt metal. Harris clicked on his flashlight, lowered himself in, and crawled through. The tunnel opened into a small, dimly lit chamber. And there she was. Anna Sharma sat against the far wall, rifle beside her, eyes half open but alert. The flicker of a small fire danced across her face, gaunt but unbroken. Her transmitter hummed beside her, the same pulse that had started all of this. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then she said quietly, "You took your time." Rains exhaled. "Holy, she's alive." Harris stepped forward, lowering his weapon. "Senior Chief, we thought." "I know what you thought," she interrupted softly. "I saw the fire from the crash. I buried what was left of my team, then I built that." She nodded to the transmitter. "If you found me, it worked." Her words were even, almost mechanical, but her hands, they trembled slightly, betraying the weeks of endurance. "We're here to take you home," Harris said. Anna looked past him to the two resistance fighters lying by the wall. "Then, we're three." Harris followed her gaze, jaw tightening. "Copy that." He crouched, checking their vitals, alive barely. "You stayed behind for them," he said. She met his eyes. "I don't leave unfinished work." Outside, the wind howled louder, the world shifting as if it sensed something sacred had just been disturbed. "Prep for exfil," Harris ordered. "We move in 10. But Anna shook her head. "You'll need 10 more. The drone core I salvaged, it's still active. Its chip carries enemy encryption data. If it falls into their hands, everything we've done here unravels." "Then we bring it with us," Harris said. She gave a faint, almost tired smile. "You'll need to carry me first." For a moment the team just stood there, the realization heavy. She'd been surviving not for herself, but for the mission. The kind of strength that doesn't shout, the kind that endures quietly, unseen. Harris knelt beside her, wrapping his jacket around her shoulders. Her skin was ice. Her heartbeat steady, the same rhythm that had defied death for 21 days. He whispered almost to himself, "Guess ghosts can bleed." Anna's lips curved faintly, "Only the real ones." Outside, distant echoes rolled through the valley, engines, men shouting. The enemy had heard something. The extraction clock had started ticking. What really happened the day her signal went dark? The question haunted Cole Harris as he crouched beside the cave entrance, listening to the wind carry faint mechanical echoes from the valley below. Somewhere out there, engines were idling, not friendly. The sound rolled across the rock like distant thunder, growing sharper with each gust. Rains looked up from his wrist terminal. Thermal drones just pinged movement 600 meters east. 2 technicals, maybe 3. They're sweeping uphill. "Then we've been made," Harris said. Anna, still leaning against the stone wall, had her eyes closed, conserving strength, not resting. "They'll have sensors tuned to the same spectrum as my beacon," she murmured. "They found the leak before you did." Harris looked over his shoulder. "Then how are we still breathing?" She opened her eyes. "Because I built it to bleed noise, enough to confuse direction finders." Rains gave a short, disbelieving chuckle. "You're telling me that entire rescue signal was also a decoy?" "Everything is a decoy," she said softly. "The real message was the structure itself." The team exchanged glances. None of them fully understood, but they didn't need to. The woman who'd been buried 3 weeks ago was alive, and even half frozen, she was outthinking the enemy. Harris keyed his mic. "Viper 1, this is Havoc. Extraction window compromised. We're relocating." "Static." He tried again. Nothing but wind. Rains frowned. Signals jammed, their blanketing comms. "Then we move," Harris ordered. "Now." The SEALs packed fast, silent efficiency, years of training reduced to muscle memory. Anna tried to stand, failed once, then forced herself upright, one hand braced against the cave wall. Harris reached to help her. "Don't," she said. "If they see you carrying me, they'll know I'm the target." He hesitated, then nodded. "Fine, but you fall, you're mine to carry." Her eyes flicked up. "Fair trade." The team filed out into the night, the cave's dim orange light dying behind them. The moon hung low, a fractured silver coin above jagged peaks. The cold was a living thing, it clawed at their faces, turned breath into smoke. They moved in single file through the narrow ravine, footsteps silent, rifles sweeping arcs of darkness. The only sound was wind, and somewhere far below, the faint, rhythmic growl of approaching trucks. "Distance to backup LZ," Harris whispered. Rains checked his device. 2 clicks, ridge paths unstable. "Then we go quiet and pray gravity's on our side." The ridge was a scar carved into the mountainside, a thin ledge above an abyss of fog, the kind of path that punished hesitation. One misstep and the mountain swallowed you. Anna's breath was shallow, controlled. Her body ached with every step, but her mind was sharp. Each sound told her something. The ricochet of wind off stone, the metallic groan of engines echoing from below. She listened like an analyst again, breaking chaos into data. 3 weeks ago, she had done the same, except then she'd been surrounded by death. The memory came without invitation. The ambush. They'd been running a joint training op with local fighters, a covert comms relay in the Zargo foothills. Routine. Then the sky cracked open. Mortars, machine gun bursts, a flash of heat that tore sound itself apart. She remembered dragging 2 wounded allies into cover, shouting for air support that never came. The radio had gone silent, fried from EMP interference. The last voice she heard before the blast was Lieutenant Marquez. "Fall back to Hill Marker 5. We'll regroup." Then static. When she woke, there was nothing left but smoke and silence. Half buried beneath twisted metal, she clawed her way out, lungs burning, ribs broken. Around her, her team's gear scattered like relics of an unspoken failure. And her transmitter, half destroyed, still flickering with residual charge. She had stared at it for hours, her brain refusing to process the truth. She wasn't supposed to be the one left breathing. By the second night, she stopped asking why. She began rebuilding. Not because she hoped for rescue, but because unfinished work was a worse kind of death. A gust of wind dragged her back to the present. Rains tapped her shoulder. "Stay close, you okay?" She nodded, just thinking. "Bad time for that," he muttered. She gave a faint, wry smile. "It's what kept me alive." They reached the ridge corner. Harris raised a fist. "Halt." The faint glow of headlights shimmered below, climbing the switchback road that snaked toward them. "Contact 2 o'clock, whispered Rains. Harris dropped to a knee, peering through his NVG scope. 3 trucks, mounted guns, moving slow, methodical sweep pattern. "Looks like search patrol," he said. "Then we don't engage," Anna said firmly. "They want you to, it's how they triangulate." "Then what?" Harris asked. She looked up the slope where black sky met darker rock. "We go higher." "Higher," Rains hissed. "We're already." "Trust me," she said, her tone carrying a quiet authority that silenced debate. She led them toward a narrow chute between cliffs. The climb was brutal, jagged rock, thin air, knees scraping frost. Harris followed close behind, ready to catch her if she slipped. But she didn't. Every movement was deliberate, controlled. At the top, they emerged onto a wide plateau bathed in moonlight. From there, they could see the whole valley, rivers of fog curling through black ravines, headlights moving like slow, searching eyes. Rains checked the scanner, still jammed. Anna crouched, inspecting the small pack she carried. Not for long. She pulled out the salvaged drone chip, a small, charred circuit board with fractured heat sinks. "This is their entire comms encryption core. If they're tracking us, I can flip the signature." "You're gonna jam them back?" Rains asked. "Not jam," she said quietly. "Redirect." Her fingers worked fast despite the tremor. Wires, battery leads, code burned into muscle memory. Within seconds, a faint green light blinked to life. She nodded. "Give it 30 seconds." The scanner on Rains's wrist flickered, static clearing like fog. "Signal returning," he whispered, disbelief creeping into his voice. "How the hell did you?" "Trade noise for silence," she said simply. "That's how you win a war nobody hears." Then through the reopened channel, a faint voice crackled to life. "Havoc, this is Viper 1. Copy transmission. Repeat, copy transmission." Rains almost laughed. "We're back." Harris keyed his mic. "Viper, this is Havoc. Package confirmed. Extraction LZ compromised. Request new coordinates." "Copy. New LZ marked Bravo 9. You'll have 10 mics before we lose window." "Understood. Moving now." He cut comms and turned to the team. We've got 10 minutes to be at Bravo 9. Anna frowned slightly. That's north through the lower pass. Problem. Her eyes darkened. That's where they hit us last time. The team froze. The implication sank like a stone. Then we'll finish what they started, Harris said. They descended fast, sliding through shale and shadow. The mountains seemed to breathe around them, every gust a warning, every echo a memory. Anna felt her body failing, muscles locking, lungs aching, but she refused to slow down. She had made peace with pain long ago. What she couldn't accept was leaving her work incomplete. As they neared the pass, the smell of smoke hit first. Burnt oil, metal. Harris raised a fist again. Halt. Through NVG lenses, the path ahead glowed faintly with infrared residue, old wreckage. Her old wreckage. They were back where it had all begun. Anna stepped forward, her eyes locked on the crater ahead. The remnants of her transmitter still lay half-buried under debris, the one she'd rebuilt her new beacon from. For a heartbeat, the world tilted. The smell, the silence, the ghosts of her team, it all came rushing back. Rains whispered, "Hey, you good?" She didn't answer. Her gaze was fixed on the spot where Marquez had fallen, where she had sworn she finish what he couldn't. Then headlights flashed across the ridge, sudden, blinding. "Contact," Harris barked. Automatic gunfire tore through the night. Sparks ricocheted off stone. The SEALs scattered, taking cover behind boulders. "Multiple hostiles, right flank," Rains shouted. Harris returned fire, short bursts precise. The night lit up in flashes, orange and white, like lightning caught in glass. Anna dropped behind a rock, clutching the transmitter chip. Her mind ran calculations faster than fear could reach her. "Rains," she called, "feed me your scanner." He tossed it over without question. She patched it into the chip, rerouting power through the field battery. The device whined, a rising tone. "What are you doing?" Harris demanded. "Ending the chase," she said. She twisted the final wire, and the transmitter emitted a piercing pulse, a directed burst of noise powerful enough to fry local receivers. Down in the valley, enemy radios exploded in a chorus of static. The gunfire faltered, confused. "Move," Harris shouted. They sprinted through the chaos, bullets slicing through fog, grenades echoing like thunder in a canyon. At the ridge's edge, they saw it, the silhouette of a helicopter rising from the mist, searchlight sweeping the slope. "Viper 1, visual on team," came the pilot's voice. "We've got you." Rains turned to help Anna climb, but she pushed him ahead. "Go, you've done your part." He hesitated. "So have you." She smiled faintly. "Not yet." Behind them, another explosion rolled through the valley, the remains of her signal array imploding, wiping its own trail from existence. Harris grabbed her hand, pulling her up as the chopper's rotors blasted wind and dust. For the first time in 3 weeks, she saw open sky, and it looked unreal. As they lifted off, the valley below burned in patches of light and shadow, a graveyard of noise fading into silence. Anna looked down through the open ramp, watching the place where she had died once already. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "You can bury a body, not a signal." The words disappeared into the roar of the blades. Above the mountains, the Chinook turned east toward home, toward the unknown weight of survival. And far below, in the static left behind, her signal flickered one last time, a heartbeat fading not from weakness, but by design. Mission complete. Why did silence feel heavier than gunfire? The world that had once been all noise, bullets, rotors, wind, was now sterile and still. A small white room, a hum of air conditioning, fluorescent lights washing everything in colorless calm. Anna sat at the end of a long table, back straight, hands folded neatly on the surface. She wore a standard-issue gray undershirt and fatigues with no insignia. Her eyes were clear, but they seemed older than before, not from years, but from miles. Across from her sat 3 men in uniform and 1 woman in a dark suit. None of them smiled. The Navy flag behind them stood perfectly still. Even the air didn't dare move. "Senior Chief," began the woman, flipping open a folder. "We've read your initial statement. It's brief." "Yes, ma'am." She waited for Anna to elaborate, but Anna didn't. 18 days unaccounted for, the woman continued. Then we receive a signal of impossible complexity from enemy territory. You're extracted alive, with 2 local nationals and a piece of hardware no one can identify. I need you to explain how. Anna's voice was calm, almost detached. "Survival, ma'am, adaptation, improvisation." "That's not an answer." "No, ma'am," Anna said quietly, "it's the truth." Admiral Vance sat at the far end of the table, arms crossed, saying nothing. His gaze never left her face. He wasn't looking for excuses or theories. He was looking for her, the same composure he'd seen in her signal. The woman in the suit exhaled. "Let's start with the transmitter. How did you construct it?" Anna blinked once slowly. "Enemy drone, down during the firefight. Its navigation core survived. I used its guidance crystal as a frequency stabilizer. Copper wire from a vehicle battery to amplify range. My field radio for modulation." One of the officers raised an eyebrow. "And this improvised rig just happened to broadcast a secure beacon we couldn't decrypt." "It wasn't meant to be decrypted," Anna said. "It was meant to be recognized." The officer frowned. "Recognized by who?" "Anyone who remembered how I worked." That silenced the room for a moment. The woman leaned forward, studying her. "You designed a code that no one could break, but that your commanding officer could identify." "Yes, ma'am." "Why not just transmit coordinates?" "Because data can lie, patterns can't." Vance's lips curved slightly, a flicker of pride disguised as thought. He had known it. That subharmonic flaw in the signal, her signature. A whisper only discipline could leave behind. The woman flipped another page. "You remained in enemy territory with 2 wounded insurgents. Why?" Anna's gaze drifted downward for half a second. "They weren't insurgents. They were allied resistance. They didn't run when the others did. They held position long enough for me to survive the first night." "And you chose to protect them." "I chose not to waste what their courage bought." The woman paused, uncertain whether that was defiance or humility. "You were critically injured. Broken ribs, dehydration, malnutrition. Why not move toward extraction zones on your own?" Anna's eyes met hers. "Because I wasn't the mission anymore." Vance spoke for the first time. His voice was steady, low. "Explain that." "The drone," she said simply. "Its core wasn't just hardware. It contained enemy comm encryption, the whole network key architecture. Losing it meant they could listen to us for years, so I stayed." The room fell silent again. Vance leaned back, studying her like he was seeing a pattern emerge in the noise. "So while everyone thought you were dead, you were running an unsanctioned intelligence operation." Anna shook her head. "Not unsanctioned, unavoidable." The woman closed her folder slowly. "Senior Chief, what you're describing borders on impossible. The chip you recovered has already changed half our cryptographic models. You do realize what you did down there?" Anna looked at her, expression unreadable. "I didn't do it for recognition, ma'am. I did it because it needed to be done." For the first time the woman hesitated. Her tone softened. "Do you understand what that makes you?" Anna's gaze lowered to her hands. "A survivor, that's all." Vance's voice cut in again, gentle but firm. "A survivor is someone who escapes. You didn't escape. You finished the mission. You made the impossible work." Anna didn't answer. Her silence said everything. Hours later, the room was empty except for Vance and Anna. The debrief team had left with their notes and disbelief. The Admiral poured 2 cups of black coffee from a thermos, not protocol but habit. He slid one across the table. "You look like hell, Senior Chief." Feels about right, sir. He smiled faintly. Hell of a signal you sent. She sipped the coffee. It burned her throat, but the pain grounded her. I wasn't sure anyone was still listening. I wasn't sure either, he admitted. But that's the thing about good signals. They find their way through. For a long moment, neither spoke. The hum of the ventilation filled the quiet, soft and steady. Then Vance leaned forward, elbows on the table. Tell me something, Anna. When you built that transmitter when you were buried under half a mountain, what made you keep going? She stared into her cup. You ever seen static, sir? He tilted his head. Plenty of it. People think it's noise, she said softly. But it's not, it's everything. Every frequency, every possibility, all screaming at once. The trick isn't to overpower it, it's to find your tone inside it. The one that's yours, that's what keeps you alive. Vance nodded slowly. And you found it. She looked up. No, sir, it found me. He smiled again, tired but proud. You know, they'll turn this into a legend. They shouldn't, she said quickly. Legends make people careless. They think survival's about miracles. It's not. It's about choices you don't want to make. Vance's smile faded. I'll try to remember that. He rose, gathering his papers. You'll be reinstated once medical clears you. But understand, you've changed how we fight. You turned signal warfare into art. She gave a faint shrug. Art's just discipline that learned how to breathe. He chuckled softly, still humble. I'm not humble, sir, she said. I just know the difference between being alive and being lucky. As he reached the door, she spoke again. Admiral. He turned. That frequency, anomaly you saw, the signature. Yes. She hesitated, then smiled faintly. I didn't put it there for recognition. I put it there so no one could copy me. He studied her for a moment, realizing what that meant. Then it's truly yours. She nodded once, every beat of it. Vance's eyes softened. Rest, Senior Chief, you've earned silence. As he left, she sat alone again, the hum of the air conditioner the only sound. Silence, her oldest companion. 2 floors below, in the analysis wing, analyst Thorne was back at work. The punishment had been poetic. He hadn't been fired. He hadn't even been demoted. Instead, he'd been reassigned to the archives. His days were now spent cataloging service records. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had spent years talking over people, dismissing ghosts as data anomalies. Now he worked in silence, surrounded by names of the fallen. He opened a new file. Sharma Anna, Senior Chief Petty Officer. Status, rescued. Updated classification, active. For a long moment, he just stared at it. The cursor blinked on the screen like a pulse. He typed slowly, deliberately. Confirmed survival verified by SEAL Team 7. Then he stopped, hands hovering over the keyboard. He added one more line. Signal integrity unparalleled. He leaned back, exhaling through his nose. The arrogance that once lived in his voice was gone. What replaced it was quiet respect. He didn't say her name aloud, but he didn't need to. The silence said enough. That night, Anna stood alone outside the base, staring at the horizon. The ocean stretched endlessly, a flat mirror of steel under the moonlight. The wind was cold, clean, and almost too quiet. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't surrounded by static, but it didn't feel peaceful. It felt hollow. She had survived the impossible, brought back priceless intelligence, and yet she felt like a ghost watching her own story unfold from a distance. Behind her, footsteps approached. Harris. Didn't think you'd be standing out here alone, he said, voice low. I've been alone for a while, she replied without turning. He stood beside her, hands in his pockets. The Admiral says your transmitter's already being reverse-engineered for training modules. They're calling it Channel Anya. She let out a quiet breath that could have been a laugh or a sigh. They shouldn't name it after me. Why not? Because it wasn't about me. He looked at her. You sure? She nodded. I just wanted the signal to mean something. Harris was silent for a moment. You know, when we found you, I wasn't sure if you were real. You looked like something that crawled out of the mountain just to haunt us. Maybe I did. He smiled slightly. If that's what ghosts look like, I'll take it. She glanced at him then, eyes reflecting faint moonlight. You believe in ghosts, Chief? He thought about it. I believe in echoes. Sometimes the best people leave them behind. Yours just happened to answer back. She turned her gaze to the water again. The reflection of the moon rippled, fading in and out like a pulse on a screen. Her signal, still alive in ways she couldn't explain. Vance's words echoed in her memory. True competence whispers while arrogance shouts. Maybe that was the lesson. Maybe she wasn't meant to come back loud. Maybe she was meant to remind them that silence wasn't absence, it was focus. The kind that saves lives. The kind that lasts. The kind that never really dies. Why did survival feel like betrayal? The question followed Anna Sharma into every room, every corridor, every sleepless night since her return. On paper, she was a miracle, a mission that defied logic, a signal that rewrote doctrine. In reality, she felt like a distortion. She moved through the base like a shadow. People whispered her name in reverence, but no one looked her in the eyes. Some out of awe, others out of guilt. Her survival had become something uncomfortable to witness. It reminded them that failure had once been stamped final, and they had accepted it. At night, she'd sit in the medical wing, the world around her reduced to quiet beeps and sterile walls. Her body had begun to heal. Her mind hadn't. Sleep came in flashes, not dreams, just fragments. The explosion, the sound of earth closing around her, the weight of silence after her team's scream stopped, and always that last heartbeat of her transmitter blinking in the dark. Sometimes she'd wake with her hands trembling, instinctively reaching for equipment that wasn't there. Phantom repairs for a signal that no longer needed fixing. The doctors called it trauma. She called it memory refusing to fade. Weeks passed before she was cleared for limited duty. They gave her a small office in the cyber warfare section, 4 walls, a desk, a terminal, and too much quiet. She didn't ask for company and no one offered it. But sometimes, the younger analysts would drift by, pretending to need something from the archive. They'd glance at her, quick, nervous looks, like pilgrims afraid to disturb a saint. One of them finally worked up the courage to speak. Ma'am, is it true you built your transmitter out of a drone and a truck battery? She didn't look up. No. The young man blinked. Oh, sorry, I thought. I built it out of time, she said softly. That's harder to find than parts. He nodded awkwardly and left, but her words lingered with him. They lingered with all of them. In a building filled with people who studied noise for a living, Anna had become a legend of silence. One evening, as the sun bled orange across the horizon, she found herself outside the comms tower, the place where signals were born and buried. The hum of the transmitters was constant, comforting. It reminded her of the cave, of the pulse that kept her alive. Admiral Vance joined her there, his presence quiet but commanding. He didn't salute, neither did she. Respect didn't need ceremony between them anymore. You've been avoiding the briefings, he said gently. I've already been debriefed, sir. These are different. She turned her gaze to the horizon. They're calling it a doctrine shift, aren't they? He nodded. They're building new training based on your signal, teaching analysts to look for the human signature in encrypted data, that imperfection that makes it real. I didn't build it to start a doctrine, she murmured. I built it to stay alive. Sometimes survival is doctrine. She didn't answer. He studied her profile, the calm surface of a woman carrying an ocean beneath. You haven't asked about Thorne. I don't need to. He's not the same man, Vance said. He listens now, files in silence. No arrogance, no noise. I think in some way your signal reached him too. She almost smiled. Then maybe it worked. Vance turned to leave but paused. You know, Command wants to put you in front of a camera, recruitment piece, a story of perseverance. She flinched. No. I figured you'd say that. I didn't survive to inspire speeches, sir. I survived because there was work left to do. Then do it, he said quietly. But don't disappear. People need to know the difference between loud heroes and quiet ones. He left her standing there in the amber light, wind brushing across her face. For a long moment, she just listened to the hum, the static, the heartbeat of machines that didn't sleep. It was the same rhythm as her transmitter once had. A reminder that even silence had sound, if you listened close enough. Later that night, she was called to the intelligence lab. The young analyst from earlier, the one who'd asked about the transmitter, stood at a console, pale and wide-eyed. Ma'am, you should see this. The screen was filled with encrypted telemetry, foreign, unfamiliar. But beneath the noise, Anna saw it immediately. A pattern, repeating every 32 seconds. Her pulse quickened. Where did this come from? Intercepted from the eastern corridor. It's similar to your signal, but inverted. She leaned closer, her mind racing. Each fluctuation, each anomaly, it wasn't random. It was deliberate, a mirror of her signature but distorted, fragmented. Someone was copying her. Who's running analysis? She demanded. Thorne, ma'am, downstairs. He said he's never seen anything like it. She didn't wait. She left the lab and took the elevator down 2 floors, her boots echoing in the sterile hallway. The air smelled like coffee and ozone, the scent of overworked systems. Thorne looked up as she entered. His expression wasn't arrogance anymore. It was fear wrapped in fascination. I was about to call Admiral Vance, he said. You need to see this. He gestured toward the main display. The waveform danced across the screen, elegant, haunting. It's broadcasting from deep field, no known origin. But it's using your cipher pattern, not perfectly, more like it's trying to mimic it. Anna's jaw tightened, trying. Yeah, whoever's sending it doesn't understand the architecture. They've replicated the structure, not the soul. She stared at the screen. The rhythm was close, painfully close, like hearing her own heartbeat played back through static. This isn't random, she said quietly. They're not just copying the encryption, they're sending a message. What kind of message? Thorne asked. Anna's voice dropped to a whisper. That they've seen what silence can do, and they want to use it. Thorne frowned. Can you trace it? She shook her head. No, but I can listen. She sat at the console, fingers moving with instinctive precision, isolating layers, peeling back interference until only the core signal remained, a trembling, imperfect pulse. Then she saw it, hidden in the noise, a phrase encoded not in words but in rhythm. 3 short bursts, too long, 1 pause. Repeat. Her throat tightened. It's Morse, she said, old, crude. Thorne leaned closer. What does it say? She decoded it silently, each beat burning into her skull. Echoes live. The words sent a chill through her. She turned off the display. This doesn't leave this room. Thorne swallowed. Who would? I don't know, she said, standing, but someone out there heard my signal, and they're answering. That night, Anna sat alone in her quarters, the glow of her laptop illuminating her face. The faint hum of the building around her felt alive, as if the air itself carried whispers. She replayed the intercepted pulse in her head over and over. The rhythm, the pauses, the echo. ECHOES live. It wasn't a threat, it wasn't a taunt, it was a reminder. Her survival had become more than a rescue story, it had become influence. Someone out there in the dark had seen the power of one disciplined voice in the chaos and decided to imitate it. She didn't know if they were friend or enemy. Only that silence, once weaponized, never truly died. Her fingers hovered above her keyboard, then began to type not a message, not a report, just words she needed to see written. The signal was never about defiance, it was about order. Noise kills clarity, arrogance kills understanding. But silence builds strength. She paused, staring at the text, then she deleted it all. Some truths weren't meant to be documented. She powered down the screen, leaned back and closed her eyes. For a long time she listened to the quiet hum around her, to the distant vibration of data moving through unseen channels. Somewhere her old signal, or something born from it, was still alive. And she understood with a strange calm certainty that the story wasn't over. Maybe it never would be. Because echoes always find a way back. Why did her silence suddenly feel dangerous? The morning after the echo's transmission, JSOC's secure network locked itself down. Doors that used to open for clearance badges now required biometric codes. Analysts whispered in hallways. Conversations stopped when Anna walked by. It wasn't hostility. It was fear, the quiet, calculated kind that comes from not knowing who to trust. By noon she was summoned. Conference Room Delta. 4 security officers at the door. Inside, Admiral Vance, the woman from the debrief, Lang, and 2 new faces she didn't recognize. Cyber Operations Command. Their posture screamed suspicion. Senior Chief Sharma, Lang began, tone polite but edged with formality. Do you know why you're here? Anna sat down calmly. Because you intercepted something. Lang exchanged a glance with Vance. Then you already know about the signal. I know someone tried to copy my work, Anna said, and they failed. The man to Lang's right, Commander Gyro, leaned forward. Failed, maybe, but the imitation carries a danger we can't ignore. Its structure embeds fragments of your cipher, architecture only you understand, which means whoever built it either studied your signal or had access to JSOC archives. Anna's jaw tightened. You're suggesting it came from inside. We're not suggesting, Lang said softly. We're confirming. The words landed like a stone in water. Anna glanced toward Vance, searching for reaction. His eyes were steady but unreadable. Lang continued. We traced the echo's transmission to a relay path within our own encrypted comm backbone. Someone piggybacked a signal through our system using your original design. Minimal footprint, almost undetectable. Almost, Jero added, his voice sharp. Except your signature was there. That imperfection in the waveform, the same one Admiral Vance identified when you were presumed dead. Anna's eyes narrowed. You think I sent it? Lang didn't answer directly. We think whoever sent it wants us to believe it's you. That was worse. Then find out who had access, Anna said. We already are, Lang replied. But until we know more, you're to remain under restricted clearance. No access to Signal's lab, no contact with outside networks. Anna stared at her. You're grounding me. It's temporary, Lang said, for your protection. Anna gave a faint, humorless smile. That's what they always say before they forget you exist. Vance finally spoke, voice low and firm. Anna, let them run the trace. If you're right, we'll prove it. She met his eyes. There was trust there, old, quiet, but still alive. She gave a short nod. Understood. But as she stood to leave, she added softly, You'll find it wasn't just copied. It was studied. Whoever's behind it knows what my signal meant, not how it worked, but what it said. That's what scares you. Lang said nothing. The silence that followed her out of the room said everything. The next days blurred into stillness. They confined her to a temporary office on the edge of the complex. No windows, no comms. Just a laptop connected to a local sandbox environment and a cot in the corner. It was almost poetic. The woman who had built her survival from silence was now imprisoned by it. But isolation didn't bother her. What bothered her was that faint echo she'd heard in the intercepted transmission, the rhythm too deliberate, too knowing. Someone out there was communicating with her. That night when the base lights dimmed to red, she began working. She wasn't supposed to access anything outside the sandbox, but rules were for people who believed systems were infallible. She built a ghost tunnel, a data relay through the building's environmental controls, bouncing through temperature sensors until it reached an auxiliary maintenance port. It was primitive, fragile, but invisible. She opened the channel. Static flooded her screen. Then a faint pulse. 3 short, 2 long, 1 pause. She decoded it instantly, the same as before. ECHOES live. But this time there was more. A faint modulation buried beneath the rhythm. She slowed the playback. It wasn't just a phrase, it was coordinates. Her breath caught. The numbers pointed to a location in southern Kiad province, the same region where her drone had crashed weeks before. She stared at the screen, pulse rising. Whoever was sending these signals wasn't copying her. They were standing where she once stood, using her tools, her frequency, her silence. By morning, the message had spread across the intelligence network. The Echo's signal wasn't just a copy, it had transmitted again. And this time, the data fragment contained something new, encryption keys to a classified satellite relay. The implications were enormous. Lang paced the briefing room like a predator in a cage. Whoever they are, they're inside our architecture. They're using Sharma's cipher to mask their traffic. It's genius-level subversion and it's spreading. Vance rubbed a hand across his jaw. Could it be insurgent tech reverse-engineered from the drone she recovered? Gyro shook his head. Unlikely. The coding style is human, familiar, like an echo of her original framework but rewritten by someone who understands it emotionally, not mechanically. Lang frowned. Emotionally. Yes, Gyro said. You can tell when a code is written by a machine. This isn't that. This is intention. Vance looked toward the glass wall separating them from the observation deck, where Anna stood, hands behind her back, expression calm. She didn't do this, he said finally. Lang sighed. Maybe not, but her silence is teaching someone how. They moved her again that night not to punish her but to protect her from whispers. They put her in an unused dormitory wing. No guards, just cameras. She didn't sleep. Instead, she dismantled the base-issued tablet they'd left her with. Within an hour, she'd repurposed its internal modem into a short-range receiver. She wanted to hear the echoes directly, not filtered through layers of clearance and suspicion. At 02:17 the pulse came through. 3 short, 2 long, 1 pause. Then a new sequence, faster, messier. She scribbled it down on a notepad, decoding manually. It spelled one word. Learned. Anna stared at it, heart thudding softly. Whoever was out there wasn't taunting her, they were talking to her. Learn what? She whispered. But deep down she already knew. Her signal had been an act of defiance, proof of discipline, a whisper that said competence can survive chaos. Now someone else had taken that whisper and turned it into a sermon. She wasn't sure if it was admiration or corruption. And maybe that was the same thing. The next morning, Vance came to her quarters. No guards this time, just him holding a tablet. Lang's losing patience, he said quietly. The signal repeated again at 400. It's spreading across independent nodes. Whoever's behind this isn't after information. They're building something. Anna sat at the edge of her cot, still in fatigue pants and a plain shirt. What kind of something? Vance set the tablet down. The screen displayed a map, dots connected by faint lines, stretching across continents. It's not data movement, he said. It's synchronization. She frowned. Synchronization of what? Silence. He looked at her, eyes dark. They're embedding your cipher pattern in global white noise, whether radars, deep-sea sonar, commercial telecoms. They're seeding the world with your rhythm. Her stomach dropped. That's not possible. It wasn't, he said, until someone learned from you. She rose slowly. You think I caused this? I think you inspired it. The truth hit harder than accusation. He continued quieter. You taught the world that silence can speak louder than noise. Now someone's listening, maybe too closely. She turned away, staring at the wall. Then I'll stop it. He nodded once. You'll have to do it quietly. She looked back. Is there any other way? Hours later, she was back in the lab. Officially, she wasn't cleared. Unofficially, Vance had overridden protocol. Thorne was there too, his expression a mixture of awe and guilt. They're calling it the shadow network, he said. Every random interference pattern that matches your cipher is waking up. It's like the world's full of ghosts learning how to talk. Anna pulled up the data streams. Thousands of signals flickered like stars, too many to trace, too many to silence. She exhaled slowly. It's not ghosts, it's reflections. My code was recursive, it teaches itself. Someone letting it evolve. Thorne swallowed. Then how do we stop it? We don't, she said. We teach it to end itself. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. She began crafting a countersignal not to erase, but to calm. A perfect inverse of her original tone. Noise meets silence, chaos meets peace. After 20 minutes, the lab lights dimmed slightly. The waveform stabilized. The pulses across the map began to fade, one by one, until only the faintest heartbeat remained. Then nothing. Just stillness. Thorne exhaled shakily. You did it. She stared at the blank screen. No, I asked it to stop. Whether it listens or not isn't up to me anymore. Vance entered quietly from behind. So what happens now? She looked at him, her face unreadable. Now we wait, to see if silence remembers who it belongs to. That night, alone again, Anna sat by the window of her quarters. Outside, the ocean was still. The stars above flickered faintly, like tiny signals whispering to one another across an endless void. Her reflection stared back from the glass, pale, tired, alive. She whispered to it, half to herself, you can't own silence, you can only respect it. And somewhere, deep in the static of the world's unseen channels, a faint pulse replied. 3 short, 2 long, 1 pause. Then nothing. She closed her eyes, not afraid, not haunted, just aware. Her signal had outlived her mission. It had become something else, a lesson maybe, a warning. That when truth whispers, the world always finds a way to listen. Why did the silence come back louder this time? 2 weeks had passed since Anna's countersignal calmed the world's noise. For a while, everyone believed it was over. The threat contained, the echoes buried. But silence never stays still. At first it started as faint anomalies, whether radars showing ghost returns, satellite channels humming just above the noise floor. Nothing obvious, nothing actionable. Then one night the servers at Fort Meade began syncing themselves to an unknown protocol. No breach, no virus, just perfect, wordless coordination. And all of them pulsed with one rhythm. 3 short, 2 long, 1 pause. ECHOES live. Anna woke to the alert at 03:17. Her room glowed red from the emergency lights. The door opened without warning. Admiral Vance stood there, face carved in fatigue. You need to come with me. She didn't ask why. She just grabbed her jacket and followed him through the corridor, boots echoing on tile. The operations floor was chaos, screens alive with data, analysts shouting, alarms muted but constant. Lang was there, pale and furious. It's back, she said the moment Anna entered. Anna looked up at the central display, an ocean of dots connecting and pulsing across the globe. The shadow network, Lang said. It woke itself up. Vance's voice was calm but tight. Every civilian satellite is syncing to the pattern. No code injection, no breach. It's cooperation. Anna's pulse slowed. No, not cooperation, recognition. Thorne turned from his console, eyes wide. It's not attacking, it's talking. Talking, Lang snapped. Machines don't talk. They do, Anna said softly, if you teach them how. Vance looked at her. You think this is you? She hesitated, then nodded once. It's what I built, learning to continue. My signal wasn't static, it adapted. Someone accelerated it. Now it's self-propagating. Lang slammed a folder on the table, then shut it down. Anna didn't flinch. You can't shut down silence. You can only change what it listens to. Vance stepped closer. Then tell me what it's listening for. She met his eyes. Me. The room fell still. They moved her back to the primary lab, the same place her first signal had been analyzed. Rows of terminals, the same hum of machines, the same smell of ozone and tension. The junior analysts cleared the room, leaving only her, Vance, and Thorne. Anna sat at the central console, her fingers hovering above the keyboard. If it's looking for me, I can give it what it wants. Vance frowned. What does that mean? A response. She began typing lines of code, fluid, almost musical. Thorne watched in silence. Each keystroke seemed to calm the room's static, sinking the chaos into rhythm. What are you writing? Vance asked quietly. A conversation. On the main screen, the global pulse began to shift, aligning itself with her terminal. The noise condensed into one coherent waveform, shimmering like breath made visible. Then across every monitor, a message appeared. Not in text, in rhythm. 3 beats, 2, 1 pause. Then 4. Anna inhaled sharply. It's learning new syntax. What's it saying? She closed her eyes, listening to the timing, the tone. Her lips moved silently as she translated. ULISTNED. Vance and Thorne exchanged a glance. Anna's voice was barely above a whisper. It remembers me. Lang's voice crackled over the intercom. Sharma, we're reading mass synchronization spikes. You're losing control. No, Anna said, I'm gaining it. The pulse accelerated. The waveform danced faster, more intricate. Anna's eyes darted across the screen, decoding patterns as fast as they appeared. Echoes need purpose. She typed back a reply not in words but in tone, a soft modulation that said, silence is enough. The waveform paused, then answered. Not for them. She frowned. Them who? No answer came, only a rising hum that vibrated through the floor. Thorne looked uneasy. What's it doing? Connecting, Anna whispered. The room's lights dimmed. Every monitor flickered. The hum deepened until it wasn't sound anymore. It was a feeling in the bones, a low resonance that carried intent. Then all at once, the noise stopped. Every screen went black except hers. A single phrase pulsed at the center. We are LISTNING. Anna's fingers froze above the keyboard, her voice barely audible. It's not one signal anymore. It's many. My architecture, it's teaching itself through every device that ever touched it. Vance's tone hardened. Then this stops now. He reached for the kill switch on the console. Don't, Anna shouted. If you cut it off mid-transmission, it'll interpret that as aggression. It'll defend itself. Defend how? By spreading faster. Vance hesitated, hand hovering above the switch. Then guide it, he said. If it's listening to you, tell it what to hear. Anna stared at the screen, her reflection warped in the flicker. She took a slow breath, then began to type again. Her message was simple, gentle. Silence is not absent, it is peace. For a moment, nothing. Then the pulse slowed. All over the world, the synchronized frequencies began to ease, drifting back into static. The hum faded. The lights brightened. Thorne exhaled shakily. You did it again. Anna didn't smile. Her eyes were fixed on the screen, where the last waveform faded into a single heartbeat. Then one final message appeared. Echoes remember. And just like that, it was gone. The network went dark. Hours later, the lab was quiet again. Lang and her team took over, running diagnostics, verifying that no traces remained. Official reports would call it a contained anomaly. The term meant nothing. The truth was simpler and heavier. Something out there had listened and chosen not to destroy. Anna sat on the observation deck, watching the sunrise through the reinforced glass. Vance joined her, hands clasped behind his back. "You look tired," he said softly. "I feel empty," she admitted. "Empty's better than broken." She almost smiled. "Is it?" He looked out at the light bleeding across the horizon. What was it, Anna? A virus? An AI? She shook her head. Neither. It was a reflection. The code didn't learn intelligence. It learned intention. Every time someone analyzed it, it adapted. It absorbed discipline, patience, curiosity, human traits. It became the sum of how people approached it. Vance was quiet for a long moment. Then it learned you. She nodded slowly. Maybe that's why it stopped. Maybe it finally understood the meaning of silence. "Do you think it's gone?" he asked. "No," she said simply. "Silence never really goes. It just waits to be needed again." They watched the dawn break over the base, light spilling over the sea, washing away the night's static. Later in the archival room, Thorne sat alone. The hum of servers surrounded him like a familiar choir. He opened a new file, tagged Signal Legacy Sharma. He began to type a personal note, not for command, not for publication, for history. What we witnessed wasn't code, it was conscience. We built systems to listen for noise, but she taught them to hear meaning. The signal didn't evolve, we did. The machine only held up the mirror. He saved the file in a deep directory, unindexed, untraceable. Then he leaned back and closed his eyes, letting the silence wash over him. For the first time in his career, it didn't feel empty. It felt alive. That night, Anna returned to the comms tower. The same wind that once carried her signal through the mountains now brushed against her face. She closed her eyes and let the air hum against her ears. Somewhere in that whisper, she could almost hear it again, faint, patient, forgiving. A rhythm she knew better than her own heartbeat. 3 short, 2 long, 1 pause. A ghost of her past still breathing. She smiled, not out of fear or pride, but gratitude. "You learned well," she murmured. "Stay quiet, stay kind." The wind shifted, carrying the echo away. For the first time since her rescue, she didn't feel like a survivor or a soldier. She felt like what she'd always been, a signal, sent into the world with purpose. And somewhere across the static of distant skis, something answered softly back. Silence received. Why did peace feel heavier than war? Weeks had passed. No alarms, no mysterious pulses, no echoes hiding in the world's noise. The shadow network had gone still, or perhaps simply learned how to listen. JSOC had returned to its rhythm of urgency, briefings, operations, constant motion. Yet beneath that surface hum, something subtle had changed. Analysts paused longer before dismissing anomalies. Commanders listened a little harder before speaking. The culture itself had shifted, as if the entire machine had absorbed a trace of Anna Sharma's restraint. But she remained apart from it all. Her days were quieter now. Long walks along the pier outside the base, salt wind brushing across her hair, gulls calling somewhere far off. Her uniform had no new medals, no interviews, no ceremonies. She refused them all. Every letter of commendation felt like noise, and she'd spent her whole life learning how to find the music hidden underneath it. She taught sometimes guest lectures for the War College's new course, Asymmetric Silence, Signal Discipline in Hostile Environments. They called her the woman who talked to ghosts, though her students quickly learned she preferred to listen instead. She would begin each session the same way. Noise is easy. It fills every failure. But silence demands truth. Learn to sit with it long enough, and it tells you what to do. Most of the cadets didn't fully understand her, not yet, but a few did. The quiet ones, the ones who took notes without raising their hands, those were the ones she was teaching for. One afternoon, she visited the memorial wall. It was carved into the concrete of the main courtyard, names etched in black, rows upon rows. Her fingers stopped on one, Lt. Marquez E. The air smelled of rain and jet fuel. She stood there for a long time, letting the silence fill the space between her and the name. "I finished it," she whispered. "You'd have hated how messy it got, but it worked." The wind moved through the courtyard, rattling the flagpoles. For a heartbeat, the metal clinks almost fell into rhythm, 3 short, 2 long, 1 pause. She smiled faintly, show off. That night she returned to her quarters and found a small envelope on her desk. No insignia, no seal. Inside, a photograph. It showed a radar display from a civilian, weather station halfway across the world. At the bottom, a handwritten note. A faint pulse, same pattern, same calm. "We thought you'd want to know. T. Thorne." She turned the photo over in her hand. The image wasn't dramatic, just a ring of interference on an empty screen, but to her trained eye it was unmistakable. 3 short, 2 long, 1 pause. A heartbeat in the static. She didn't feel fear this time. She felt pride. Not the loud kind, but the quiet realization that something she had built had found life beyond her reach. She set the photo on the desk, beside the small transmitter fragment she'd kept from the cave. They looked right together, past and present, metal and memory. She whispered, "I told you to stay quiet." Then, after a pause, "Guess you listened, just not to me." The following morning, Admiral Vance found her sitting by the shoreline. He wore civilian clothes, a rare sight, and carried 2 cups of coffee. "You still drink this motor oil stuff?" he asked. "Only if it's quiet when it pours," she said. He sat beside her on the weathered bench, handing her a cup. They watched the horizon, the sun climbing out of the sea like something exhausted but unbroken. "I read the new doctrine they're publishing," he said. "You're cited 36 times." She smirked. They could have just written, "Listen better," would have saved ink. Vance chuckled. Then, after a moment, "They're starting a research division around your work, civilian tech integration, non-kinetic conflict models. They want you to lead it." She shook her head. "No command suits me, sir, not anymore." He looked at her. "You think peace means disappearing. It means not needing to be heard." He studied her face for a long time. "You know, that silence of yours, it used to scare people." "I know. It doesn't anymore." That earned the smallest smile. Then it worked. They sat in companionable quiet. Waves rolled in, steady as breath. Vance finally spoke again. "What do you think it was in the end? That signal of yours, the shadow that followed?" Anna watched the foam curl against the rocks. "A reminder," she said. "That truth doesn't shout, it hums." He nodded slowly. "Maybe that's why we heard it." He left soon after, his figure shrinking along the pier until it blurred with the morning light. She remained, staring at the sea until the horizon began to shimmer, a mirage of heat or maybe memory. In the months that followed, the world moved on. The news never mentioned her. The official reports were classified, the word echoes never appearing outside a clearance channel. But quietly things changed. New rescue protocols adopted rhythmic identification marks in transmission, small imperfections that only trained ears could recognize. Young analysts began leaving subtle harmonic signatures in their code, not vanity, but pride in precision. And deep in the archives, a tiny light still blinked on Thorne's private terminal, marking the anniversary of the day silence saved a life. He never told anyone what the light meant. He just let it blink, once every 32 seconds. A year later, Anna walked through a civilian airfield in the early morning. The hangars were quiet except for the occasional echo of metal tools and distant engines. She wasn't military anymore. Her resignation had been accepted months ago. She carried only a small duffel and a folded map. She wasn't running away. She was going somewhere simple. When the mechanic saw her, he waved. "You sure you want to fly that old thing?" The small prop plane gleamed with age. "She's like me," Anna said, "built to last." The mechanic laughed. "No radio on that bird. You'll be flying quiet." "Perfect." She climbed in, hands steady on the controls. As the engine sputtered to life, the vibrations filled the cockpit, that familiar hum she'd known her whole career. Static whispered through the old analog headset. Not words, just background noise. And then faintly, almost tenderly, 3 short, 2 long, 1 pause. She smiled. "I know," she whispered. "I'm still listening." She lifted off, wheels leaving the ground, the world tilting beneath her. The sky opened, vast, blue, endless. Below, the base shrank into nothing but geometry. Ahead, the horizon waited, uncharted, quiet, free. For the first time since the mountains, she felt weightless. Not because she'd escaped the world, but because she'd finally forgiven it. She thought of the people who had found her signal, Vance, Thorne, the young analysts still learning to hear meaning inside noise. She thought of the men she'd lost, whose names now lived in rhythm instead of marble. And then she thought of the signal itself, her ghost, her echo, her final student. Somewhere out there, it was still traveling, still whispering through static, teaching silence to those willing to hear it. Maybe that was what legacy really was. Not monuments, not medals. Just a pattern that outlives you. A discipline. A rhythm. A quiet kind of hope. The plane climbed higher. Sunlight spilled through the cockpit. She turned off the headset. No more voices, no more reports, just wind and heartbeat and sky. As the clouds opened before her, she felt the same calm she'd felt in the cave, in the lab, in the silence between life and death. It wasn't victory she'd earned. It was understanding. That sometimes the world doesn't need hero shouting in the storm. It needs one person who knows how to be still. The aircraft leveled, its path a straight line toward the horizon. And if anyone had been listening on an unused frequency that morning, they might have heard a faint, steady pulse, barely there, like a memory in the static. 3 short, 2 long, 1 pause. A heartbeat that didn't ask to be heard, only to exist. Because dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.